1:44 a.m., the passive sonar operator aboard the Los Angeles-class attack submarine, conducting its standard patrol in the northern Arabian Sea, detected a contact bearing 027 degrees. Faint, intermittent, consistent with a diesel-electric submarine operating on battery power at low speed. She logged it at 1:44 a.m. and began the classification sequence. The contact was at a depth she estimated from its sound propagation characteristics at approximately 120 to 180 meters, moving at 4 to 6 knots on a heading that, if maintained, would bring it within 40 nautical miles of the carrier group operating 180 nautical miles to the northwest. 40 nautical miles is within the effective engagement range of the Iranian Fateh-class submarine's primary armament, the Valfajr heavyweight torpedo and the JASC-2 anti-ship cruise missile. The contact was intermittent because a professional crew was managing its acoustic signature with discipline. The diesel-electric submarine on battery power is the most acoustically difficult target in modern anti-submarine warfare. It has no spinning turbines, no continuous combustion, no persistent machinery vibration. At low speed on battery, it generates less acoustic energy than a pod of migrating cetaceans. The operator had detected this contact in a 14-second window of slightly higher acoustic activity, a brief movement of machinery, possibly a trim adjustment, possibly a pump cycle, before the contact returned to near silence. She had been tracking similar contacts for 6 years. She logged her confidence level at 2 on a scale of 1 to 5. Possible submarine. Not certain. The contact faded at 1:47 a.m. She maintained the bearing for 22 minutes, logging each passive sonar sweep result before reclassifying the contact as a biologics cluster at 2:09 a.m. The confidence shift was based on 3 consecutive sweeps with no contact and 1 sweep with the signature more consistent with a large marine animal than mechanical origin. The reclassification was professionally appropriate and technically defensible. The contact had not been strong enough for passive sonar to generate a classification above Level 2 confidence. The subsequent data did not support upgrading the assessment. Reclassifying as biologics was the correct decision given the available evidence at 2:09 a.m. The professional obligation was not to the original assessment. It was to the log record that preserved the original data regardless of the reclassification. The log was the evidence. The reclassification was the interpretation of the evidence at a specific moment. Different moments could produce different interpretations of the same underlying data. At 2:09 a.m., she marked it biologics. She did not delete the 1:44 a.m. log entry. Standard procedure was to retain all possible contact logs regardless of subsequent reclassification. The log entry was transmitted with the next scheduled data burst to the carrier's ASW coordination cell at 2:11 a.m. The ASW coordination officer aboard the carrier who reviewed the data burst at 2:14 a.m. looked at the original one. 44 a.m. contact log for 40 seconds. The bearing, the depth estimate, the brief machinery signature before the contact went quiet. He cross-referenced it against 2 things: the Fateh-class submarine's known operating area from the past 30 days of collection, and the 3-day-old intelligence assessment flagging elevated IRGCN Navy activity consistent with deployment of 1 or more Fateh-class submarines on extended patrol. The 3-day-old assessment had not identified specific submarine positions. It had assessed that IRGCN submarine activity had elevated and that the Arabian Sea approaches were a plausible patrol corridor given the carrier's known operational pattern. He flagged the contact at 2:16 a.m. as low-confidence possible submarine and transmitted a search recommendation to the P-8A on the Northern Patrol orbit. His annotation, reclassified biologics but bearing and depth estimate consistent with Fateh-class operating characteristics. Recommend active search within 15 nautical mile radius of original contact bearing. The P-8A crew received the recommendation at 2:18 a.m. What followed over the next 78 minutes was not a dramatic engagement. It was a process, methodical, technically demanding, acoustically complex, that unfolded with the deliberate rhythm of a discipline that has no tolerance for hurry. Anti-submarine warfare is patience-made operational. The P-8A descended to 200 feet and began laying a sonobuoy pattern centered on the original contact bearing at 2:21 a.m. The AN/SSQ-53 DFAR sonobuoys, directional low-frequency ranging systems, descended on small parachutes to their programmed depths and began transmitting passive acoustic data on their assigned frequencies within 90 seconds of water entry. Each buoy covered a specific acoustic bandwidth, allowing the crew to cross-correlate returns across the array and attempt triangulation of any acoustic source within the pattern. The DFAR pattern laid by the P-8A crew was not a grid search. It was a geometry, designed around the known propagation characteristics of low-frequency sound in the Arabian Sea's thermocline layer at this season and this depth, accounting for the background noise floor generated by the commercial shipping traffic in the northern lane 40 nautical miles to the northwest, and optimized to detect the specific acoustic signature the Fateh class generates when operating on battery at 4 to 6 knots. The P-8A's acoustic operators had the Fateh class signature profile in their system's database. Every buoy frequency and placement had been calculated for this specific target class. The search was not general. It was addressed to a specific acoustic question. Is there a Fateh-class submarine in this water, at this depth, on this bearing? The pattern produced nothing in the first 12 minutes. Clean water, background oceanic noise, distant shipping. The operator expanded the pattern to the northeast and southwest, adding 4 more buoys at 2:34 a.m. At 2:38 a.m., buoy 7 returned an intermittent bearing. Not the same 027 degrees bearing the submarine had first logged, but 019 degrees. A submarine at 5 knots over the 54 minutes since the original contact would have traveled approximately 4.5 nautical miles on its heading. If the original contact had been a submarine moving on a 340-degree heading at 5 knots, the expected new position was consistent with the 019-degree bearing from buoy 7's position. The geometry fit. The crew elevated their confidence to 3 of 5 at 2:39 a.m. and transmitted to the ASW coordination cell. They began localizing the contact with additional buoys, compressing the pattern radius while the submarine, if it was a submarine, continued unaware that it had been acoustically detected. At 2:47 a.m., a second buoy confirmed the bearing at 022 degrees with a depth estimate of 140 to 160 meters. 2 buoys, 2 bearings, cross-referenced. The contact was approximately 14 nautical miles from its estimated position at the time of original detection, moving at an estimated 4.8 knots on a heading of approximately 335 degrees. 335 degrees, heading at 4.8 knots, from a position 14 nautical miles northeast of the original contact. extended in approximately 4 hours and 20 minutes. A submarine on that heading would be within torpedo range of the carrier group's projected position. The ASW coordination officer elevated the contact to 4 of 5 confidence at 2:49 a.m. He transmitted the contact package to NavCent and requested engagement authority assessment. He was not requesting authority to engage. He was requesting an assessment of the authority threshold that would need to be met before engagement could be authorized. There was a difference, and it mattered. The assessment returned from NavCent at 2:53 a.m. Confirmation of a submarine in active approach posture toward a U.S. naval formation was sufficient to authorize engagement under the rules of engagement framework applicable to the Arabian Sea theater. Confirmation required an active detection. The P-8A's passive sonobuoy contact was a strong indicator, classified as __0__, but not the active confirmation the engagement threshold required. The P-8A crew needed to go active. Going active meant transmitting on AN/SSQ-62 diecast active sonobuoys. Sonobuoys that broadcast a sound pulse and listen for the echo, producing a precise range and bearing to any reflective object at depth. Active pinging reveals the search to the target. Any submarine crew monitoring for active sonar transmission, standard procedure on patrol, would know immediately that they had been detected. A well-trained crew would initiate maximum speed evasive maneuvering, reducing the acoustic signature's predictability and forcing the P-8A to reacquire on a moving, maneuvering target. Active pinging also confirmed the contact. Passive sonar suggested. Active sonar proved. The P-8A crew deployed 2 diecast buoys at 2:55 a.m., time to activate simultaneously. The dual buoy activation was designed to create a bracketing ping pattern that would localize the contact to within 200 meters, regardless of which echo return geometry produced the better signal. Both pings returned echoes at 2:55 a.m. The bearing crossfix. The contact was at 19.4 nautical miles from the carrier group's projected position in 4 hours. Depth approximately 148 meters. Speed confirmed at 5.1 knots, heading 334 degrees. At 2:55 a.m., the contact accelerated. The submarine crew had detected the active sonar at 2:55 a.m. simultaneously with the pings. The acoustic environment in a submarine during an active sonar detection is unambiguous. The ping is loud, directional, and unmistakable. A professional submarine crew's response is equally unambiguous. Maximum battery discharge rate, maximum speed, immediate course alteration. The contact's speed jumped from 5.1 knots to an estimated 9 to 11 knots within 40 seconds of the active ping, and its heading shifted to approximately 180 degrees. A direct reversal, attempting to open range from the carrier group at maximum available speed. A Fateh-class submarine at maximum battery discharge rate can sustain approximately 11 knots for 40 to 60 minutes before battery depletion forces a speed reduction. At 11 knots on a 180-degree heading, it was moving directly away from the carrier group and directly toward Iranian territorial waters. The nearest Iranian territorial water boundary was approximately 140 nautical miles to the north-northwest. At maximum speed, the submarine would reach territorial waters in approximately 12 hours. Long before that, it would exhaust its battery and be forced to slow to reduce power consumption, reducing its speed to 3 to 4 knots and making it acoustically trackable again. The ASW coordination officer transmitted the confirmation at 2:56 a.m. Active detection confirmed. Submarine classification, Fateh class, probability high. Engagement authority threshold met. The authorization to engage transmitted from NAVCENT at 2:59 a.m. The P-8A had one Mark 54 lightweight torpedo loaded on its weapon stations. The Mark 54 is designed for exactly this scenario: an airborne acoustic detection followed by torpedo delivery against a submarine attempting to evade. It deploys from the aircraft, enters the water, activates its own sonar, and begins an autonomous search and engage sequence, homing on the acoustic return of the submarine. Its maximum search depth is appropriate for the confirmed contact depth of 148 meters. The P-8A positioned for the torpedo drop at 3:01 a.m. The submarine was now at an estimated range of 18.7 nautical miles from the carrier group and moving away at 10.3 knots. The Mark 54 released at 3:02 a.m. from 200 feet at the P-8A's optimal delivery airspeed. The torpedo entered the water at 3:02 a.m. and activated its search sonar at depth. It acquired an acoustic return at 3:04 a.m. The return was consistent with the submarine contact, a large metallic object at 143 meters depth, moving at approximately 9 knots on a 178-degree heading. The Mark 54 began its intercept run at 3:04 a.m. At 3:06 a.m., the submarine crew detected the torpedo. Countermeasure deployment was immediate. The Fateh class carries decoy devices that broadcast acoustic signatures designed to attract homing torpedoes away from the submarine's own return. One decoy deployed at 3:06 a.m. The Mark 54's guidance logic evaluated the decoy return against the submarine return at 3:07 a.m. The decoy's acoustic signature was assessed as too static, a consistent broadcast pattern rather than the dynamic, Doppler-shifted return of a moving metallic hull. The Mark 54 classified the decoy as a decoy and continued on the submarine return. A second decoy deployed at 3:08 a.m. The Mark 54 evaluated both returns simultaneously at 3:09 a.m. The submarine had altered course again, now running at 210 degrees, using the course change to increase its Doppler shift differential from the stationary decoys. The Mark 54's processing evaluated the 3 acoustic returns: Decoy 1, Decoy 2, moving hull, and maintained track on the moving hull. It was the only moving target. At 3:11 a.m., the sonar operator aboard the P-8A confirmed loss of submarine acoustic signature on the passive buoy network. The submarine's acoustic energy had dropped sharply. Either the crew had slowed to reduce thermal noise in a final evasion attempt, or the torpedo had closed to within the submarine's crush depth effect range. The operator logged both possibilities. At 3:12 a.m., the passive buoy network recorded a brief, sharp acoustic event on a bearing consistent with the submarine's last confirmed position. The acoustic signature was not characteristic of torpedo detonation. It was characteristic of rapid hull compression. The submarine had not been impacted by the Mark 54's warhead. It had been driven by the Mark 54's approach below its crush depth during a crash dive evasion attempt at a depth that exceeded its design parameters. The ASW coordination officer logged the acoustic event at 3:12 a.m. His confidence assessment of the contact outcome: 4.5 of 5 that the submarine was no longer a navigable vessel. His notation: acoustic event consistent with structural failure at depth. Continuing surveillance of the area. Secondary detection attempt will follow. The P-8A maintained surveillance of the contact area until 4:17 a.m., when fuel state required it to proceed to recovery. No further acoustic contact was obtained. No surface evidence of the submarine appeared within the search area during the surveillance period. The contact was classified as a mission-terminated submarine at 4:17 a.m. with a confidence assessment of 4 of 5. In the carrier's ASW coordination cell, the officer who had flagged the original 1:44 a.m. log entry closed his tracking record at 4:22 a.m. The record ran from 1:44 a.m. to 4:17 a.m., 2 hours and 33 minutes from the first tentative passive sonar detection to the final confidence 4 classification. In that time, a 4-knot contact on an approach bearing toward a carrier group had been classified, tracked, confirmed, and addressed without a single surface vessel or carrier aircraft involved. The entire engagement had been prosecuted by a Los Angeles-class submarine's initial detection and a single P-8A Poseidon with 1 lightweight torpedo. He reviewed the original 1:44 a.m. log entry one more time. The contact had initially been reclassified as biologics. Standard procedure had retained the log. His cross-reference with the intelligence assessment had produced the recommendation that led to the search. The search had produced the confirmation. The confirmation had produced the engagement authority. The engagement had produced the acoustic event at 3:12 a.m. The chain was a retained log entry, a 40-second review, a search recommendation, and 78 minutes of disciplined anti-submarine work. The Fateh-class submarine's operational deployment had been 14 days. It had not completed its patrol. The intelligence assessment that had flagged elevated IRGCN submarine activity had been generated by signals collection on the submarine's pre-deployment maintenance and supply cycle. That collection had elevated the assessment probability that 1 or more Fateh-class boats were at sea in the Arabian Sea corridor. The elevated assessment had produced the carrier group's heightened ASW posture. The heightened posture had placed the Los Angeles class in the patrol position that generated the 1:44 a.m. contact. The entire sequence traced back to signals intelligence from a maintenance and supply cycle that had transmitted 17 days earlier. That transmission had been flagged and assessed. The assessment had changed the carrier group's posture. The posture had placed the Los Angeles class in the right position at the right time. The operator had been alert enough to log a 14-second acoustic event at 1:44 a.m. that she had sufficient professional integrity not to delete when she reclassified it as biologics 25 minutes later. Professional integrity in the form of a retained log entry. That was the beginning of the chain. Time from first possible contact to mission terminated classification. 2 hours, 33 minutes. Contact classification sequence. Possible submarine logged 1:44 a.m. Reclassified biologics 2:09 a.m. Elevated to probable submarine 2:49 a.m. following P-8. A passive sonobuoy confirmation. Confirmed submarine 2:55 a.m. following active sonar detection. Engagement authorized 2:59 a.m. Engagement 1 Mark 54 lightweight torpedo released 3:02 a.m. Active homing acquired contact 3:04 a.m. 2 decoy countermeasures evaluated and discounted 3:07 a.m. to 3:09 a.m. Acoustic structural event logged 3:12 a.m. Contact outcome Classified, mission terminated with 4 of 5 confidence at 4:17 a.m. No surface evidence, no further acoustic contact within surveillance window. U.S. assets employed: 1 P-8A Poseidon, 1 Mark 54 torpedo, 19 sonobuoys, 1 Los Angeles-class submarine providing initial detection. U.S. personnel losses: 0. Carrier group undamaged, no threat awareness during the engagement. The group's operational pattern continued without modification. The ASW engagement had resolved in the approach corridor without any surface element of the carrier group involved. IRG CN Fateh class submarine status. Mission terminated with high confidence. Crew of unknown size, not recovered during the surveillance window. Total U.S. engagement cost: approximately $900,000 in sonobuoy expenditure and Mk-54 torpedo. Aircraft sortie costs additional. Against this, the Fateh-class submarine's replacement value of approximately $220 million. The IRGCN had invested approximately 3 years of development costs and $220 million in a platform that had been located, tracked, and addressed in 78 minutes of P-8A prosecution. The engagement produced no visible event, no acoustic detonation signature, no surface debris in the surveillance window, no radio traffic from the submarine. The carrier group continued operations without knowledge that an engagement had occurred 40 nautical miles from their formation. The ASW coordination officer transmitted the final status report at 4:23 a.m. and then transmitted a second message. Recommend notification to carrier group commanding officer of completed ASW engagement in approach corridor. The notification reached the carrier flag bridge at 4:25 a.m. The response was logged at 4:26 a.m. Acknowledged. Well done to the P-8A crew and the ASW coordination cell. Continue patrol. The Arabian Sea was quiet at 4:26 a.m. The carrier group continued on its heading. The sonobuoy field continued transmitting passive data to the P-8A's replacement crew already airborne and inbound. The contact area was under surveillance. The approach corridor was clear. It had been made clear over 2 hours and 33 minutes by a log entry that could have been deleted and was not.